My name is Emily Wang. I am 29 years old and I live in New York City. Excuse me, miss, deliveries are round the back. The security guard didn't even look me in the eye. He just put a heavy hand in front of my chest, blocking me from the revolving gold doors of the Grand Meridian Hotel. I looked down at my faded jeans and simple t-shirt. To him, I was invisible. To him, I was just the help. Through the glass, I saw her, Madison. My sister looked like a princess in her white cocktail dress, surrounded by people holding champagne flutes. She looked right at me. She saw the guard pointing me toward the garbage cans near the service entrance. I waited for her to wave him off. I waited for her to come get me. Instead, she covered her mouth with her manicured hand and giggled. She turned her back on me, shaking her head as if I was a stray dog trying to crash a royal wedding. My stomach twisted, but my face stayed calm. She thought I was an embarrassment. She thought I was broke. She had no idea that the ground she was standing on belonged to me. She had no idea that I wasn't just a guest. I was the owner. But before I tell you how everything flipped, like and subscribe, drop a comment. Where are you watching from? My name is Emily Wang. I am 29 years old. I walked around the side of the building toward the service entrance. The gravel crunched under my sneakers. Every step took me further away from the gold lights and the red carpet, and closer to the smell of dumpsters and old grease. It felt familiar. This was exactly where my family had always placed me, out of sight, out of mind, and definitely not worthy of the front door. It wasn't just tonight. This was my whole life. Growing up, there was always a spotlight in our house, and it was always pointed at Madison. Madison was beautiful. Madison was charming. Madison could sing, dance, and charm a room full of adults before she was even 10 years old. My parents looked at her like she was a rare diamond they had accidentally discovered. And me, I was just Emily. I was the quiet one. The one with the frizzy hair and the glasses. The one who preferred reading in the corner to performing for guests. My parents didn't dislike me exactly. They just didn't really see me. I was part of the background furniture. Essential, maybe, but boring. I remember my 16th birthday. It was a Tuesday. I came downstairs expecting maybe a pancake breakfast or a card. Instead, I found my mother on the phone, frantic. Madison had a pimple. A single red pimple on her chin, and she had a modeling audition that afternoon. The whole house was in crisis mode. My father was running to the pharmacy for creams. My mother was holding ice to Madison's face, while Madison screamed and cried about her life being ruined. I ate a bowl of cereal standing up at the counter, washed my own bowl, and walked to school. Nobody said happy birthday until 3 days later, when my mom saw my driver's license application on the table. "Oh, Emily," she had said, laughing a little. "I completely forgot. Well, we'll get you a cake next week." We never got the cake, but that was okay, because while they were busy polishing Madison, I was busy building. It started with a laptop I bought from a pawn shop with money I made mowing lawns. I was 13. I was fascinated by the internet. Not the social media part. I didn't have friends to talk to, but the backend. The code. The way you could build an entire world out of words and numbers. I started learning to code. Then I started building websites for local businesses. Then I started trading. My parents hated it. "Emily, get off that computer," my dad would say, walking past my room. "It's rotting your brain. Why don't you be more like your sister? She's out there meeting people, making connections. You're just staring at a screen playing silly games." They thought it was a game. They thought I was playing video games or chatting with strangers. They never asked. Not once did they sit down and say, "What are you working on, Emily?" If they had, I would have told them. I would have told them that by the time I was 18, I had developed a piece of software that optimized hotel booking systems. I would have told them that I sold that software for $2 million the summer before I went to college. But I didn't tell them. I learned early on that sharing my success only made them uncomfortable. It didn't fit their narrative. Madison was the star, I was the failure. If I succeeded, it made Madison look less special. So I kept my mouth shut. I moved out the day I turned 18. I rented a small, crappy apartment near the university. My parents came to visit once. They looked around at the peeling paint and the second-hand furniture and shook their heads. "See," my mother whispered to my father, loud enough for me to hear. "She's struggling. We have to be gentle. She just doesn't have Madison's drive." I let them believe it. I let them believe I was a broke student scraping by on loans. I let them slip me $20 at Christmas with pity in their eyes. I didn't tell them that the crappy apartment was a choice. I didn't tell them that I was reinvesting every single penny I had. I didn't tell them that while Madison was partying her way through fashion school on their dime, I was buying distressed properties. Real estate became my addiction. I loved it. I loved taking something broken and forgotten, like me, and turning it into something valuable. I bought rundown motels. I renovated them. I flipped them. Then I bought small hotels, then bigger ones. I worked 18 hours a day. I didn't date, I didn't travel for fun. I built. 5 years ago, I made my biggest move. I formed a holding company called EW Ventures. It was anonymous, faceless. Through it, I started buying shares in the Grand Meridian chain. It was a failing luxury brand. Old, dusty, and losing money. The board wanted out. I bought them out, all of them. It took 3 years, but I did it. I owned the Grand Meridian. I owned 17 luxury hotels across the country. I owned the land, the buildings, the brand, and the debt. I turned it around. I fired the lazy executives. I renovated the lobbies. I made it profitable again. And tonight, my sister was celebrating her engagement in the jewel of my empire, the downtown Grand Meridian. My parents had called me a month ago. "Emily," my mom had said, her voice tight. "Madison is getting engaged to Brett Ashford. The Ashfords are, well, they are very high society. We're having the party at the Grand Meridian." "That's nice," I had said, holding back a laugh. "We want you to come," she continued. "But, please, Emily, dress appropriately, and maybe don't talk too much about your online work. The Ashfords are very traditional. We don't want to embarrass Madison." "I understand," I said. "And don't expect to sit at the head table," she added quickly. "It's just for family and the wedding party. You'll be at table 19, near the kitchen. It's better that way." Table 19, the forgotten table. "Okay, Mom," I said. "I'll be there." I decided right then. I wasn't going to dress up. I wasn't going to pretend to be the high society sister they wanted. I was going to be me, the disappointment, the failure, the help. I wanted to see them. I wanted to see how they treated me when they thought I had nothing. I wanted to see if there was any love there, under the pity. I reached the heavy metal door of the service entrance. It had a sign that read, "Authorized personnel only." I took a deep breath. The cool night air filled my lungs. Inside that building, my family was drinking champagne that I paid for, standing on carpets I chose, bragging about money they didn't have. I pushed the door open. The heat hit me first. The service entrance opened directly into the main kitchen corridor. It was a wall of noise and smell. The scent of roasting garlic, searing steak, and expensive truffle oil was thick in the air. Pans clattered. Chefs shouted orders in rapid-fire French and Spanish. Servers in crisp white uniforms sprinted back and forth, with heavy silver trays balanced on their shoulders. I stepped inside, letting the heavy door slam shut behind me. "Hey, you!" a voice boomed across the chaos. I turned to see a large man in a head chef's uniform marching toward me. His face was red and sweat was beading on his forehead. He looked stressed. "You're late," he yelled, pointing a ladle at me. "I'm not," I started to say. "I don't want to hear it." He cut me off. "The agency said they were sending a replacement dishwasher and a runner an hour ago. We are drowning here. The Ashfords are demanding appetizers faster than we can make them. Move." He didn't even look at my face. He just saw jeans and a t-shirt and assumed I was the agency hire. "Put this on." He grabbed a stained white apron from a hook and threw it at me. It hit me in the chest. I caught it. I looked at the chef. I could have fired him on the spot. I could have said, "I am Emily Wong and I sign your paycheck." But I didn't. I wanted to see this through. I wanted to know what it felt like to be on the receiving end of my family's ego from this angle. I tied the apron around my waist. "Washing station is in the back, but I need hands on trays now," the chef barked. "Grab that tray of lobster puffs, take it to the ballroom. Go." I didn't argue. I picked up the silver tray. It was heavy, loaded with delicate pastries. I kept my head down and walked into the flow of traffic. I pushed through the swinging double doors that led from the kitchen to the ballroom service corridor. The noise of the kitchen faded, replaced by the hum of string quartets and the chatter of hundreds of people. I walked toward the main ballroom entrance. I stood near the pillars, acting like a server waiting for a signal. The ballroom was magnificent. I had approved the renovation myself 6 months ago, the crystal chandeliers, the velvet drapes, the gold leaf ceiling. It looked perfect. And there, in the center of the room, was Madison. She looked stunning, I had to admit. Her dress was silk, tight-fitting, and covered in pearls. She was holding a glass of champagne, laughing loudly. My parents were on one side of her, beaming. On the other side was Brett Ashford, her fiancé, looking bored, and his parents, Mr. and Mrs. Ashford. The Ashfords looked like statues made of ice. Mrs. Ashford was wearing diamonds that looked heavy enough to break her neck. She was looking around the room with a sneer, as if the air wasn't expensive enough for her to breathe. I took a step closer, holding my tray. Madison turned and started walking toward the edge of the room, leading a group of her bridesmaids. They were heading right for me. My heart hammered against my ribs. She'll see me, I thought. She'll stop. She'll ask what I'm doing. The service here is tragic, Madison was saying loudly. I told Daddy we should have flown in staff from Paris. These locals are just so slow. Totally, one of her friends agreed. And did you see the security guard? He looked like a bouncer at a dive bar. Madison laughed. I know. I saw some homeless girl trying to get in the front door earlier. Can you imagine, trying to crash my engagement? My stomach dropped. Homeless girl, that's what she thought I was. She walked right up to me. She was 3 feet away. I looked her in the eye, she looked at the tray, she picked up a lobster puff. She ate it in one bite. Then she looked at my chest, not my face, my chest. She was looking for a napkin. Do you have a napkin? She snapped at me. I froze. Hello. Earth to waitress. She waved a hand in front of my face. She didn't know me. She literally did not recognize her own sister because I was wearing an apron. It wasn't just that she ignored me. It was that in her mind, a person in an apron didn't have an identity. I was furniture. I was a vending machine. I don't have one, I whispered. My voice shook. Madison rolled her eyes so hard I thought they would get stuck. Useless. Come on, girls. Let's go find a real server. She brushed past me. Her silk dress brushed against my denim jeans. She turned her back on me and walked away, laughing about something else instantly. I stood there holding the tray of lobster puffs. I felt a tear prick the corner of my eye, but I blinked it away. Sadness was the old Emily. The new Emily felt something else. Rage, cold, hard rage. She called me a homeless girl. She treated me like a servant. She didn't even care enough to look at my face. And my parents, I saw them across the room. My dad was shaking Mr. Ashford's hand, looking desperate to please. My mom was nervously adjusting her dress. They hadn't even looked for me. They hadn't checked table 19. They were glad I wasn't there. Hey, you with the tray, a floor manager in a suit hissed at me from the corner. Stop loitering, circulate. Guests are hungry. I looked at the manager. I looked at Madison's retreating back. No, I said softly. What did you say? The manager stepped closer, aggressive. I said no. I walked over to the nearest trash can. I tipped the silver tray. 50 expensive lobster puffs slid into the garbage. The manager's jaw dropped. Are you crazy? You're fired. Get out. Get out of this hotel right now. I slammed the empty silver tray onto a side table with a loud clang. I'm going, I said. I turned and walked back through the swinging doors into the kitchen. But I didn't go to the dish pit. And I didn't go to the exit. I walked past the shouting chef. I walked past the sweating line cooks. I walked straight to the service elevator in the back corner. Hey, where do you think you're going? The chef screamed. That elevator is for executives only. You need a key card. I stood in front of the elevator. It had a sleek black card reader and a biometric scanner. I didn't have a key card. I raised my right hand. I pressed my thumb against the scanner. The machine beeped. A green light flashed. Access granted. Welcome, Miss Wang. The robotic voice spoke clearly over the noise of the kitchen. The chef stopped chopping. The kitchen went silent. The floor manager who had followed me in to kick me out froze in his tracks. The doors slid open. I stepped inside and turned around. I looked at the stunned faces of the staff who had been treating me like dirt 5 minutes ago. If anyone asks, I said calmly, I'm going to my office. The doors closed, shutting out the noise, the smell, and the heat. The elevator rose smoothly. The sensation of going up was the only feeling in my body. My heart was still pounding, but my mind was clearing. First floor, second floor, ballroom level, guest levels. The numbers climbed on the digital display. I closed my eyes and leaned my head back against the cool metal wall. I took a deep breath. You did it, I told myself. You walked through the fire. The elevator didn't stop at the guest floors. It bypassed the penthouse suites. It went all the way to the top. The 40th floor, the executive level. Ding, the doors opened. The silence was the first thing that greeted me. It wasn't the silence of emptiness, it was the silence of power. The air was cool and smelled of expensive leather and polished wood. The carpet was thick enough to swallow the sound of my sneakers. I stepped out. The hallway was lined with modern art. Real art, not prints. I walked past the conference rooms, past the empty assistant desks. It was late, so the administrative staff had gone home. It was just me. I reached the double glass doors at the end of the hall. The frosted glass had no nameplate. Just a logo, EW Ventures. I pressed my thumb to the scanner again. Click, the locks disengaged. I walked into my office. It was a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows on two sides. The entire city was spread out below me. The lights of downtown twinkled like diamonds. Real diamonds, not the fake ones Mrs. Ashford wore. I walked to the window and looked down. Way down there, 40 floors below, was the ballroom entrance. I could see the tiny valet's parking cars. I could see the guests arriving. From up here, the drama, the insults, the engagement party. It all looked so small. I took a deep breath and let it out. This was my world. I walked over to my desk, a massive slab of reclaimed black walnut. I sat down in my leather chair. It molded to my back, supporting me. I wasn't the waitress with the dirty apron anymore. I wasn't the little sister who needed a napkin. I opened the drawer and pulled out a remote. I pressed a button, and the wall of monitors on the side of the room flickered to life. This was my command center. When I bought the Grand Meridian chain, I insisted on a complete overhaul of the security system. I wanted to know everything that happened in my hotels. Every hallway, every kitchen, every ballroom, every cash register was connected to this network. I saw the layout of my Empire Screen 1, the kitchen. I saw the chef pacing back and forth, yelling at the staff, pointing at the elevator I had just used. He looked terrified. He was probably calling security right now to report a hacker. Screen 2, the lobby, guests mingling. Screen 3, the ballroom. I zoomed in on Screen 3. The party was in full swing. I could see Madison dancing with Brett. She looked happy, but it was a performance. I knew that look. It was the look she gave when she knew a camera was on her. I looked at the data stream running on the side of the monitor. It showed real-time revenue for the night. Bar tabs, room bookings, valet charges, every bottle of champagne my father ordered. The money went to me. The fee for the ballroom rental, paid to me. The rooms the Ashfords were staying in, my property. It was a strange, intoxicating feeling. They were celebrating their wealth inside a box that I owned. I spun my chair around and looked at the framed documents on the wall. The deeds. Grand Meridian, New York. Grand Meridian, Chicago. Grand Meridian, London. Grand Meridian, Tokyo. 17 of them. My family thought I worked online. They thought I did data entry or customer service. They couldn't conceive that the silly computer games I played as a teenager had turned into a global hospitality holding company. I had kept it a secret for a reason. I knew that if they knew I had money, the dynamic would change. But it wouldn't change in a good way. They wouldn't suddenly love me. They would just use me. They would expect me to pay for Madison's weddings, my dad's bad investments, my mom's vacations. I would become their bank, but I would still be their doormat, so I stayed silent. I let them pay for dinner when we went out, even though I could buy the restaurant. I let them lecture me about saving money while I was closing multi-million-dollar deals. It was lonely. God, it was lonely. But sitting here tonight, looking at Madison dancing on the screen, I realized something. I wasn't just protecting my money. I was protecting my peace. I pulled the dirty apron off my waist. I balled it up and threw it in the corner. I turned back to the screens. Okay, I whispered to the empty room. Let's see what's really going on down there. I started switching camera angles. I wasn't looking for Madison anymore. I was looking for the Ashfords. Something about them felt off. The way Mrs. Ashford looked at the staff, it wasn't just arrogance. It was desperation. She was too tense. She was drinking too fast. And Mr. Ashford was sweating, even though the AC was blasting. I found them on camera 4. They were huddled in a corner near the back exit of the ballroom, away from the noise. They were arguing. I adjusted the audio feed. I had high-gain microphones installed in the ballroom for quality assurance. I turned up the volume on my speakers. Their voices filled my office. The audio crackled for a second, then cleared up. "Keep your voice down, you idiot." Mrs. Ashford was hissing at her husband. I leaned forward. "I can't keep it down, Joyce." Mr. Ashford sounded frantic. The card was declined at the bar. The bartender tried to run it twice. He gave me a look. "A look, Joyce, do you know how humiliating that is?" "So pay with the other card," Mrs. Ashford snapped, looking over her shoulder to make sure no one was watching. Maxed out, both of them. The business line of credit is frozen as of this morning. We are dry, Joyce. We are completely dry. I froze. The Ashfords. The wealthy, old money dynasty my parents had been drooling over for months. The family that was supposed to elevate Madison into the elite. They were broke. We just need to get through tonight, Mrs. Ashford said, her voice dropping to a sinister whisper. Just tonight. Once they sign the marriage contract, we have access to the dowry. Madison's father promised to put the deed to their lake house in Brett's name as a wedding gift. We can mortgage that immediately. My jaw clenched. They weren't just broke. They were predators. And the wedding costs? Mr. Ashford asked. Her parents are paying for everything, Mrs. Ashford scoffed. Thank God these people are so desperate for status. They didn't even ask for a background check. They just saw the Ashford name and rolled over like dogs. I felt a wave of nausea. My poor, stupid parents. They were so obsessed with image that they were walking their favorite daughter straight into a trap. Madison was going to marry into bankruptcy. She would be saddled with their debt before the honeymoon was over. But what about tonight? Mr. Ashford pressed. The hotel bill, the ballroom rental, the open bar. It's going to be $50,000, Joyce. When they try to run the final bill at the end of the night, it's going to bounce. Mrs. Ashford took a sip of her drink. Her eyes narrowed. On the high-definition screen, I saw a cruel smile spread across her face. Not if we don't have to pay it, she said. What do you mean? I mean, she whispered, we create a disaster, a reason to refuse payment. If the service is terrible, if something gets stolen, if there's a scandal, we can refuse to pay the bill, we can threaten to sue the hotel, we can stall them for weeks. Long enough to get the wedding license signed. A scandal? Mr. Ashford asked. Watch me, she said. I watched on the screen as Mrs. Ashford reached into her clutch. She pulled out a small, heavy envelope. I'm going to plant this, she said. In the staff room, or maybe in that little waitress's bag, the one Madison was rude to. Then I'll claim my diamond bracelet was stolen. We'll scream, we'll cause a scene. We'll say this hotel employs thieves. In the chaos, we refuse to sign the check and leave. I sat back in my chair. It was a setup, a classic grifter move. She was going to frame a staff member, maybe even me if she could find me, for theft to get out of paying a bill she couldn't afford. She was going to ruin a low-wage worker's life just to save face for one more night. And worse, she was targeting Madison. And Madison? Mr. Ashford asked. She's annoying, Joyce. She's loud and tacky. She's a cash cow, Mrs. Ashford spat. Brett can divorce her in 2 years, once we've drained her trust fund and leveraged her family's assets. Until then, she's our golden goose. Just smile at her. Pretend you like her squeaky voice. I felt a coldness settle in my chest. I hated how Madison treated me. I hated her cruelty. But hearing this woman, this stranger, talk about destroying my sister like she was cattle. No. Madison was a bully, but she was my bully. Nobody else gets to destroy her. I reached for my keyboard. Okay, Mrs. Ashford, I said to the screen. You want to talk about money? Let's talk about money. I opened a new window. I logged into my Equifax business account. I had access to deep financial records for vetting potential business partners. I typed in Ashford Enterprises. Red. Everything was red. Tax liens, foreclosure notices. 3 pending lawsuits for fraud. They were not just broke, they were criminals. They had been bouncing checks across the state for 2 years. I printed everything. The printer hummed in the corner of the room. Then I went back to the video feed. I rewound the footage of their conversation. I clipped the audio where they admitted to the scheme, where they called my parents dogs and Madison a cash cow. I saved the file. Ashford exposed Emfer. I looked at the time. It was 9:45 p.m. The speeches were about to start. I stood up. I walked to the small closet in my office. I kept a spare set of clothes there for board meetings. A tailored black blazer. Silk trousers. High heels that clicked with authority on the floor. I stripped off my jeans and t-shirt. I put on the suit. I let my hair down and brushed it back. I put on my glasses, not the cheap ones I wore to hide, but the designer frames that made me look like exactly who I was. A CEO. I walked back to the desk. I picked up the stack of financial papers. I picked up a tablet connected to the hotel's AV system. I looked at the screen one last time. Madison was tapping her glass with a spoon, getting ready to make a speech. She looked so happy. She had no idea her life was about to implode. I walked to the door. I wasn't going down the service elevator this time. I walked to the main executive elevator. I pressed the button for the ballroom level. It was time to introduce myself. I stepped out of the elevator on the ballroom floor. The air here was different. Down in the kitchen, it smelled like sweat and food. Up in my office, it smelled like silence and money. But here, in the hallway leading to the ballroom, it smelled like perfume and desperation. I could hear the music through the heavy double doors. A jazz band was playing. It sounded expensive. I adjusted my glasses. In my suit and heels, I didn't look like the homeless girl Madison had laughed at. I didn't look like the kitchen help. I looked like a woman who had somewhere to be. I didn't go in the main doors yet. I slipped into the side corridor, the one the staff used to clear tables. I needed to be invisible for just a few more minutes. I found a spot behind a large velvet curtain near the bar. From here, I had a perfect view of the Ashfords. Mrs. Ashford was moving. She looked like a shark swimming through a tank of tropical fish. She was holding her clutch bag tight against her side. Her eyes were darting around the room. I watched her walk toward the service station. A young waitress, maybe 19 years old, was setting down a tray of dirty glasses. She looked tired. She had her back turned to Mrs. Ashford. Her personal bag, a cheap canvas tote, was tucked under the table. I saw Mrs. Ashford look left, then right. It happened fast. If you blinked, you would have missed it. Mrs. Ashford reached into her own clutch. She pulled out a sparkling diamond bracelet. With a quick flick of her wrist, she dropped it into the waitress's open canvas tote bag. Then she walked away. She walked straight to the center of the room, near where my parents were standing. She waited exactly 30 seconds. Then she screamed, "My bracelet, my diamond bracelet, it's gone!" The music stopped. The chatter died instantly. Mrs. Ashford was a good actress. She clutched her wrist, looking frantic. "It was on my wrist a moment ago. I just took it off to wash my hands. Someone stole it." My mother rushed over to her. "Joyce, are you sure? Maybe it fell." "I am sure," Mrs. Ashford yelled, pointing a shaking finger at the staff. "It's this hotel. These people are thieves. I saw that girl, that waitress she bumped into me earlier, check her bag." Everyone turned to look at the young waitress. The poor girl froze. Her face went pale. She shook her head, terrified. "No, ma'am, I didn't touch anything," the girl cried. "Liar," Mrs. Ashford shrieked. "Manager, I want the manager. Call the police. I am not paying a dime to this establishment until my jewelry is found." There it was. The setup. She was creating a crime so she could refuse to pay the bill. She was willing to send an innocent teenager to jail just to hide the fact that she was broke. I looked at Madison. My sister wasn't defending the staff. She wasn't asking for calm. She looked annoyed that the spotlight was off her. "Just check her bag so we can get back to the party," Madison yelled, sipping her champagne. "God, can't we have one night without drama?" That broke me. Madison didn't care about the truth. She just wanted the show to go on. I stepped out from behind the curtain. I held my tablet in one hand. I held the stack of financial records in the other. "Don't touch that bag," I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it was clear. It cut through the room. Heads turned. At first, they didn't recognize me. They saw the suit, the hair, the posture. They thought I was a lawyer or a detective. Then my mother squinted. Her mouth dropped open. "Emily," she whispered. Mrs. Ashford glared at me. "Who are you?" "Are you with security? Check that girl's bag right now." I ignored her. I walked straight to the waitress. I stood between her and the Ashfords. I looked the girl in the eye. "What is your name?" I asked gently. "Sarah," she whispered, tears running down her face. "I didn't steal it, I swear." "I know you didn't, Sarah," I said. Then I turned to face the room. I turned to face my family. "Emily," Madison laughed, a nervous, confused sound. "What are you wearing? You look like you're going to a funeral, and why are you interrupting my engagement?" "I'm here to stop a crime," I said simply. "Exactly," Mrs. Ashford yelled. "That girl is a criminal." "No," I said, locking eyes with Mrs. Ashford. "She isn't, you are." The silence in the room was heavy. You could hear a pin drop. Mrs. Ashford's face turned purple. "Excuse me, do you know who I am?" "I am Joyce Ashford. How dare you accuse me?" "I saw you," I said. My voice remained steady. "I saw you drop the bracelet in Sarah's bag, and so did the camera in the corner." I pointed to the small black dome on the ceiling. Mrs. Ashford's eyes went wide. She looked at the camera, then back at me. You're lying. That's absurd. Why would I steal my own jewelry?" "Because you're broke," I said. The word hung in the air. Broke. My father stepped forward. He looked angry. "Emily, that is enough. Apologize to Mrs. Ashford immediately. Have you lost your mind? Ruining your sister's night with these jealous lies." "Jealous?" I looked at my dad. He looked so small to me now. I'm not jealous, Dad. I'm trying to save you from making the biggest mistake of your life. Before he could yell again, the ballroom doors swung open. Marcus, the general manager of the hotel, walked in. He looked serious. He was holding a piece of paper. Usually Marcus was the scariest man in the building. He was 6'4" and didn't smile. But tonight, he walked right past the Ashfords. He walked right past Madison. He walked straight to me. He stopped in front of me and bowed his head slightly. "Miss Wang," he said, "I have the report you asked for," my mother gasped. "Miss Wang, why is he calling her Miss Wang?" Marcus turned to the Ashfords. "Mr. Ashford, I just attempted to run the final charge for tonight's event. $52,000. The card was declined." Mr. Ashford started sweating. "There must be a mistake. It's the bank's fault. I told you to run it later." "We tried 3 cards, sir," Marcus said coldly. "All declined. We also called the bank. They informed us that your accounts have been frozen due to suspected fraud." Madison dropped her champagne glass. It shattered on the floor. "What?" she whispered. She looked at Brett. "Brett, what is he talking about? Tell him to fix it." Brett looked down at his shoes. He didn't say a word. "There is no fixing it," I said. I walked toward the center of the room. The crowd parted for me. I felt powerful. Not because I was cruel, but because I was finally speaking the truth. "They didn't pay for the party, Madison," I said to my sister. "They can't pay for the wedding. They can't pay for the house they promised you. They have nothing." "You're lying," Mrs. Ashford screamed. She lunged toward me, but a security guard stepped in her way. "Who do you think you are? You're just the ugly sister, the failure. You work on the internet," I laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. "I do work on the internet," I said, "and I also work in real estate." I looked at Marcus. "Marcus, please tell my guests who owns this building." Marcus straightened his tie. He projected his voice so everyone could hear. "This hotel is the flagship property of EW Ventures," Marcus said. EW Ventures is the sole owner of the Grand Meridian chain, and the sole owner of EW Ventures is Miss Emily Wang. I watched the realization hit them like a wave. My father's mouth opened and closed like a fish. My mother grabbed a chair to steady herself. Madison stared at me, her eyes wide, trying to process the math. "You," Madison whispered, "you own this." "I own this hotel," I said. "I own the one in Chicago. I own the one in London. I own all 17 of them." I took off my glasses and cleaned them on my lapel, waiting for it to sink in. "I didn't want to tell you," I said, looking at my parents. "Because I knew if you knew, you wouldn't see me as your daughter. You would just see me as a bank account. But I can't let you be scammed by these people." "Scammed?" Mrs. Ashford spat. "We are the Ashfords." "You are criminals," I said. I held up my tablet. "And I have the receipts." "Connect to the main screen," I told Marcus. He nodded and tapped his earpiece. A second later, the massive projection screen behind the stage, the one that was supposed to show a slideshow of Madison and Brett's love story, flickered. My tablet mirrored onto the screen. It was 20 feet tall. "This," I said, "is a conversation recorded in my office 20 minutes ago. The Ashfords thought they were alone." I pressed play. The audio boomed through the ballroom speakers. The quality was crystal clear. "She's a cash cow, Joyce," Mrs. Ashford's voice echoed through the room. "Brett can divorce her in 2 years, once we've drained her trust fund and leveraged her family's assets." The crowd gasped. On the screen, I pulled up the video feed of Mrs. Ashford talking to her husband. "Her parents are paying for everything," the recording continued. "Thank God these people are so desperate for status. They didn't even ask for a background check. They just saw the Ashford name and rolled over like dogs." Like dogs, I watched my father. His face went from red to white. He had spent his whole life trying to be important, trying to be respected. And here, in front of all his friends, the people he idolized were calling him a dog. I saw him physically shrink. He looked at Mr. Ashford with pure betrayal. And the best part, the recording played on. "We create a disaster, frame a staff member, say this hotel employs thieves." I paused the video. I looked at Sarah, the waitress. She was crying, but now she was smiling a little. She knew she was safe. Then I pulled up the documents. I swiped on the tablet. Tax liens. Foreclosure notice, ASHFORD estate. Pending lawsuit fraud. The documents flashed on the giant screen one by one. "They have $3 million in debt," I told the room. "They don't have a lake house. They don't have a dowry. They were using Madison to pay off their loans." I put the tablet down. The silence was gone now. The room was buzzing. People were whispering, pointing, taking photos. The old money facade of the Ashfords had crumbled into dust in less than 5 minutes. Brett Ashford, the fiancé, looked at Madison. "Maddie, he started. Madison looked at him. For the first time in her life, she didn't look like a princess. She looked like a woman who had just woken up from a nightmare. "You knew?" she asked him. Her voice was small. My parents said it would be okay," Brett stammered. "We just needed a little help." "A little help?" Madison screamed. "You were going to steal my trust fund. You were going to divorce me." She took off her engagement ring, a ring that I now knew was probably fake or stolen, and threw it at his face. "Get out," she screamed. "Get out of my party." Mrs. Ashford tried to rally. She stood up straight and smoothed her dress. "Fine, if you people are going to be so classless, we will leave. Come, Brett. These people are beneath us." She turned to walk away, nose in the air. "Wait," I said. Mrs. Ashford stopped. "You still have a bill to pay," I said. $52,000. "I'm not paying that," she screeched. "I know," I said calmly. "That's why I called the police 10 minutes ago. They're waiting at the front entrance. Theft of services, attempted grand larceny, and framing a minor for a felony." I pointed to the door. "Security will escort you down." 2 large security guards stepped forward. They took Mr. and Mrs. Ashford by the arms. As they were dragged out, Mrs. Ashford screaming obscenities, I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It wasn't joy, it wasn't happiness, it was relief. The cancer was gone. Now I had to deal with the patient. The Ashfords were gone, the guests were awkward. Slowly, people started to leave. The party was over. Soon, it was just me, my parents, Madison, and the hotel staff. The staff was cleaning up the shattered glass and the untouched food. My parents walked over to me. They walked slowly, like they were approaching a dangerous animal. "Emily," my dad said. His voice was different. It was soft, respectful. I had no idea. "Why didn't you tell us?" "Yeah," my mom added, forcing a smile. "We are so proud of you, honey. You own all this. That's amazing. We always knew you were smart." I looked at them. "No, you didn't," I said. "Of course we did," my mom said, reaching out to touch my arm. We wanted to protect you. But look at you now, a CEO. We should celebrate. Maybe we can move you into the penthouse. We could help you run things." There it was, the pivot. They didn't care that I had saved them. They cared that I had power. They were already thinking about how to use me, how to live in my hotel, how to spend my money. I stepped back out of her reach. "No," I said. "What do you mean?" my dad asked. "I mean you are not moving in, you are not helping me run things, and we are not celebrating." I took a deep breath. This was the hardest part. "You ignored me for 20 years, I said. "You treated me like a disappointment because I wasn't flashy like Madison. You let me live in a crummy apartment while you bought her cars. You didn't even know what I did for a living until 10 minutes ago." "Emily, that's not fair," my dad started. "It is fair," I cut him off. "I love you because you're my parents, but I don't trust you. And I won't let you use me the way the Ashfords tried to use Madison." I turned to Madison. She was sitting on the edge of the stage, crying. Her mascara was running down her face. She looked wrecked. I walked over to her. I sat down next to her. She didn't look at me, she just stared at her hands. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I didn't say anything. "I'm so stupid," she sobbed. "I thought I was better than you. I thought I was the prize, and I was just a mark, a fool." She looked up at me. "You saw me in the apron, you heard what I said, I called you homeless." "Yeah," I said, "you did." "Why did you save me?" she asked. "After how I treated you. You could have let them ruin me, it would have been funny." "It wouldn't have been funny," I said. "You're my sister, Madison. You're annoying and you're selfish, but you're my sister. I'm not going to let strangers destroy your life." She broke down then. She really cried. Not the fake, pretty crying she did for attention. Ugly crying. Shoulders shaking, gasping for air crying. I put my arm around her. It was the first time I had hugged her in 10 years. "I have nothing," she said into my shoulder. "Brett is gone, the house is gone, Mom and Dad are, well, they're them. I don't have a job, I don't have skills. I'm just a 26-year-old girl who knows how to spend money." I waited for her to calm down. "You have a choice," I said. She wiped her nose. "What choice?" "I can give you a job," I said. She looked at me surprised. "A job like in marketing or events?" I shook my head. "No, those are jobs for people with experience. You have no experience." I pointed to the back of the room, where Sarah the waitress was stacking chairs. "You start in housekeeping," I said. Madison's jaw dropped. "Housekeeping, cleaning toilets. And making beds," I added. "And vacuuming. And dealing with rude guests who treat you like furniture." She stared at me. If you want to learn how the world really works, I said, you start at the bottom. You learn what it feels like to be invisible. You earn a paycheck. A real one if you stick with it for 6 months. If you show up on time and you don't complain and you treat the staff with respect. Then we'll talk about a promotion, maybe front desk. My parents gasped. Emily, you can't be serious. Your sister, a maid. It's up to her, I said, looking at Madison. You can go back home with mom and dad and pretend to be a princess until the money runs out. Or you can build something real. Like I did. Madison looked at our parents. She saw the desperation in their eyes. She saw how hollow they were. Then she looked at the staff working in the room. Real people, working hard. She looked back at me. She took a deep breath. When do I start? She asked. I smiled, a real smile. Tomorrow, I said. 7 a.m., don't be late. The supervisor hates lateness. 1 year later, I stood on the balcony of the penthouse suite at the Grand Meridian. The city looked beautiful tonight. It had been a long year. My relationship with my parents was distant. We talked on holidays. I sent them gifts, but I didn't let them in. I kept my boundaries. They were learning that they couldn't control me, and that was enough. But Madison was the surprise. She hated the first month. She called me crying every day. Her feet hurt, her back hurt. She hated the uniforms. She hated cleaning up after messy guests. But she didn't quit. Somewhere around the 3rd month, the phone calls stopped being complaints and started being questions. Why do we use this vendor for linens? It's too expensive. Or the check-in process is too slow. I have an idea to fix it. She started to see the hotel not as a stage for her to perform on, but as a machine that needed to work. She made friends with Sarah, the waitress from the engagement party. They went to lunch together. Madison apologized to her. Today, Madison was the assistant manager of housekeeping. She was tough, she was organized, and the staff actually respected her. Not because of her last name, but because she worked harder than anyone else. There was a knock on the door. Come in, I called out. Madison walked in. She was wearing a gray suit, simple, professional. Her hair was tied back. She wasn't wearing a ton of makeup. She looked tired, but she looked happy. Hey boss, she smiled. The quarterly reports are in. Housekeeping is under budget by 10%. Nice work, I said. You're good at this. I learned from the best, she said. She walked over to the balcony and stood next to me. You know, she said, looking out at the city. I saw Brett the other day. Oh, I asked. How is he? He's working at a car dealership. He tried to talk to me, asked if I wanted to get coffee. What did you say? I told him I was busy, Madison laughed. I told him I had 17 hotels to help run. She bumped my shoulder with hers. Thank you, she said softly. For what? For not giving me money, she said. For giving me a mop instead. I looked at my sister. The entitlement was gone. The cruelty was gone. In its place was something stronger. Dignity. You earned it, Maddie, I said. She checked her watch. Okay, enough sentimental stuff. We have a VIP checking in at 10. I need to make sure the room is perfect. She turned and walked out of the suite, her heels clicking on the floor, the sound of a woman with a purpose. I stayed on the balcony for a moment longer. I thought about the girl in the kitchen with the dirty apron. I thought about the girl hiding behind the computer screen in her bedroom. I wasn't hiding anymore. I wasn't the forgotten sister. I was Emily Wang. I was the owner. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't just building an empire of hotels. I was building a family, a real one. I took a sip of my water, smiled at the city lights, and went back to work.